MZTV.
Greetings once again from the edge of the bottom of the Floridan Peninsula. As long as you don't think I'm on some other peninsula. When I say the Floridan Peninsula, I just want to differentiate it from other peninsulas, such as the Korean Peninsula. Is there a peninsula in Korea? Probably? Okay, good enough for me. This is Martin Zender, and as always, happy to be with you. The first order of business here is to thank Georgina Hunt of the UK. I got a care package from her today, which was just terrific. Everybody knows my penchant for sweets. She sent me 2 kinds of Mars bars. This one is fruit and nut, date, raisin, and peanut bar topped with fudge pieces dipped in drizzled. Well, you get the picture there. And then I gotta say, Georgina, these are my favorite. This is like, they don't bother with the fruit and the nuts here. They just go straight for the chocolate, these Mars bars. But in addition to that, as if that weren't enough, I got a package of clotted cream toffee from the Isle of Wight. Here it is. Clotted cream toffee. I told you, the Isle of Wight. And I have them right here. These toffees are amazing. I'm going to eat one on the air just to get going here. You expect them to be like the Kraft caramels that we have here in the States. And yet when you take a bite of this, it's not like super chewy. It's almost like, it's not crisp either. Well, one thing it is, it's freaking delicious. It, like, you see what I mean? You bite through it and it doesn't. You don't get this effect. You don't get this effect. Your teeth go right through it, which is extremely satisfying. And so, Georgina, I can't thank you enough. And she also sent me this beautiful card with butterflies on it. I'm assuming they're English butterflies. They look like English butterflies to me. Now, I don't know if Georgina lives in the Isle of Wight, but not only do I have the clotted cream toffee, of course, England being famous for toffees, but I got an Isle of Wight coffee mug. This is fantastic. The first I ever heard of the Isle of Wight. I know there's a big rock festival on the Isle of Wight. It's in the English Channel there. But I became aware of it with a Beatles song. Remember on their Sgt. Pepper album, When I'm 64, there's a lyric in there about the Isle of Wight. First time I ever became aware of it. How's it go? Every summer we can rent a cottage on the Isle of Wight. And if it's not too dear, we shall scrimp and save. Are you with me? Grandchildren on your knee. Vera, Chuck, and Dave. Oh, yeah. So thank you for that. I'm going to have my coffee tomorrow with my Isle of Wight mug. This is October 1st, I think. I think I'm leaning toward this. I mean, I hate to say this. I almost hate to say it. I'm not saying this is for sure. Of course, I can't. Nobody knows the date of the Snatching away. But I think this is a damn fine month for it. Because the latest crucifixion date that I think really is solid from everything I've read about the crucifixion date was 31. Right? I think in the Catholic Church they told us 33. But that's outside there. The most of the reading I've done, some people even say like 29, 30. 30 is another big year, people think. But I am convinced it was 31, which means, following the 6,000-year rule and the 2,000 years from Christ, that the return of Christ would be most definitely in October, which is the month of the Feast of Tabernacles. I think it's called Tishri in Hebrew. I think that's the name of the month of the fall. But that's the last feast that needs to be fulfilled spiritually. Passover's been fulfilled at the death of Christ. Pentecost was fulfilled 50 days later when the Spirit filled those men in the upper room and thousands joined the circumcision evangel at that time. And the only feast left to be fulfilled is the Feast of Tabernacles, the ingathering, the harvest. And so when Christ returns, it's going to have to be in the fall. If he returns in the fall of 2031, being 2,000 years from Christ, which is a significant number, we've talked about that before, subtract 7 years from that, and the tribulation would have to start this October. It might start very quietly with a peace treaty. The first thing we hear in Daniel of the man of lawlessness is the peace treaty, the treaty with many. And it will, of course, have to do with the state of Israel. I know many of you say, Martin, that's not the true Israel. I know that. I know. The true Israel is scattered around the face of the earth. God knows where they are. But there's going to be a treaty signed. And one of the signatories of that treaty is the man of lawlessness. And this doesn't necessarily have to be splashed on the news right away. There may be secret negotiations, whatever. Yeah, so am I going to be disappointed if the month of October goes by and there's no snatching away? Hell yes. But again, I'm disappointed every 2.5 minutes. We are supposed to be longing for the snatching away. I've told you I'm wrong 100 times a day about it because I say it's going to be 2.5 minutes from now. That's my first. If somebody asks me when's the snatching away going to occur, the first thing I will tell you is 2.5 minutes from now. I used to say 5 minutes, but I upgraded because Christ said if the time were not shortened, then no flesh at all could be saved. So I thought, well, it's good enough for Christ, good enough for me. So I'm going to shorten my time from 5 to 2.5 minutes. And I believe it. You need to understand this. I actually believe that the snatching away is going to happen 2.5 minutes from now. I actually believe it. That's how I live my life, in expectation, loving his appearing. We're supposed to do this. It's not stupid. It's not frivolous. And I don't feel a physical disappointment every 2.5 minutes. But underlying me, I'm constantly disappointed that Christ has not returned. Constantly disappointed. I'm gonna have a word with him when I see him. It's like, it's about time. I hope those aren't my first words to Christ. I really do, but I got an issue here. It's just, really? If you had told Paul that 2,000 years were going to expire and the saints would still be reading his letters and waiting for the snatching away, he would be incredulous. Not only that, but he wouldn't be able to believe it. He would be shocked. And he would say, no way that much time is going to go by. Because, as I've told you in other shows, I believe he believed, as well as the saints of his era, that the snatching away was going to occur in their lifetime. But that's the point of the whole thing. It is to be what Paul said in 1 Thessalonians 4:17, comfort one another with these words, console one another with these words. And it helps more than it hurts. It helps to think that it could be today more than it hurts that another day goes by and we haven't been snatched away. Why? Because chances are good we're going to wake up tomorrow. I go to bed thinking that it could happen during the night. So the disappointment that I feel every moment of I'm not going to lie to you, every moment of every day, I'm like, where are you? And I know that in the Aeonian times, as far as the 6,000 year plans of God, 6,000 years from Adam, and all the other signs, the technology available for the mark of the beast and the consolidation of power and the plethora of information and the technology that nobody can buy and sell, and knowledge shall increase. I mean, just everything, including the 6,000 years from Adam. Everything points that we're in the time. Everything points to it. And Jesus told his disciples to be aware of the times. It's not wrong to long for your deliverance. In fact, if you're not longing for your deliverance, there's something wrong. If you're content here, there's something wrong. We should be like dogs on the chain of the doghouse straining to break the bonds. Straining to break the bonds of mortality, of frustration, and really the deliverance of the rest of the world. I long to see. It's not just selfish. Part of it is, but it's not all by any means that way, because I see the condition the world is in, and I cry for the world. I cry for the pain and the suffering, the starvation, the torture, the people suffering from the hurricane. People who lost their houses, lost their jobs, don't have any power to lead the most basic life in this, the 21st century. So it's just traumatic. The earth itself is convulsing. And if you don't want to see the return of Christ, there's something wrong with you. And if you're not disappointed every day that it hasn't happened, there's something wrong with you. So don't, I think in a backhanded way, God is complimented by the fact that you're disappointed that Christ hasn't returned yet. I mean, if you had if your loved one went on vacation and then they came back, like your mom or your dad, and they come back after 2 weeks abroad and, oh, what are you doing here? I didn't even know you were gone. What's better? That or having streamers in the house and a big cake, welcome home, and a big warm hug. It's like, oh, it's so good to see you. Which is more satisfying to the person who went away? Our Savior went away. What is more satisfying to him? That we just throw ourselves at him and say, oh, thank God you're here. We've been longing for you every day. Or, oh, you're here already? I was kind of working on this project here. Can you go back? I need to finish this deal I got going with this merger with my company. Or I'm getting ready to get married. Or I just got a promotion at my job. Come on. Now? No, none of us are going to say that. Or, oh, that's right. You said you were going to come back, didn't you? No. See, we're not like that. But we're not saying we don't occupy either. Of course, we occupy. We keep ourselves going. We keep ourselves busy. But it's the undercurrent of expectation. We are groaning within ourselves. That's my problem right there, folks. Romans 8. We are groaning. All creation is groaning. We ourselves groan within ourselves for the deliverance. That's what this is. The coming of Christ, we can say it that way, or we can say we're waiting for the deliverance. Groaning, God. Groaning every day. How can you be groaning and happy at the same time? Can't figure it out. Have not figured it out. Will not figure it out. I will eat English toffee for the rest of my minutes, hours, or days here on earth. Thanks to Georgina and Vera, Chuck, and Dave on the Isle of Wight. So there's that. This is also the anniversary of this work, October 1st, 1993. I began this work full-time, and it has never not been full-time. It's been balls to the wall since October 1st, 93. Full-time go, full-time tilt, full tilt, full expose, rebuke, and entreat. Books, videos, conferences, radio, whatever I can do to get this evangel out, to expose the enemy, and to bring peace to people who have never heard this. To have that woman in Michigan walk up to me and say, I heard my gospel for the first time today. Peace and deliverance. That's why I started this. And that is what God has continuously done. It's been 31 years now. It's starting year 32. And I owe thanks to you for that. You may say happy anniversary to me. I say happy anniversary to you. It's just a date. It's no big deal. But it kind of is a big deal because I didn't know when I started in 93, every month, for all I knew, could have been the last month. I relied on the generosity of the saints, and every month was a miracle. After 31 years, every month is still a miracle. God still puts it on your hearts to support this work, and it's been going on for 31 years now, and I can't thank you enough for that. I try. In association with that, I want to tell you that you're backing the right horse. I just got notified today that somebody's translating my videos into Polish and broadcasting them in Poland. Rob Weil told me, hey, look at this. Some of my MZTV shows and Return to Zender broadcasts are being broadcast in Poland. And today, just today, I got an email from a gentleman named Bradley Shadforth, who lives in a little town called Derby in the East Kimberley, Western Australia. And he has a radio station. He's a broadcaster, been a broadcaster for 10 years, and he's asking my permission to broadcast my shows on his radio program in Derby, Australia. And of course, I'm going to send you a detailed response. My brother, Bradley, I never met this man before, but he says, I listen every day to your channel. I feel like I'm learning more and more every day that I share and study with my two boys. I hope I'm not, maybe shouldn't read this on the air. I usually ask permission, but I don't think Bradley would mind. He's sharing this with his two boys, his children. They are getting this. They are getting the evangel of peace and grace. Do I feel good about that? I feel great about it. I love it when people tell me these things. And now it's going to be broadcast, and what other people will get it because of that, including children. And I tell this to you because you deserve to hear this, because you're the people who have caused me to be able to keep going for 31 years with your generous support and your love and your Isle of Wight toffee. And everything else, every other beautiful thing that you've sent me here that makes me feel loved and appreciated. Never felt more loved in my life. So thank you. And I hope you understand this show every day is not just me teaching. This is me loving. I love this work. I love to enlighten people of the truth in the scriptures. and I love to relieve people of the burdens they've been carrying because of organized religion. Our brother Bradley here has just told me that he was raised in the Catholic Church, Catholic school in his primary years. Me too. They said it just gave him a taste, but it left a lot of questions, indeed. And it's my joy to answer those questions as I find the answers in the scriptures. So thank you, everyone, for the love and support that keeps this work going forward. And it's bearing fruit every day. I don't often talk about it. I should read more letters from people. I get unbelievable letters from people that are just so thankful. I'm going to read some questions in the next couple of days from a young 27-year-old man who has some really great questions on the topic of death and salvation. And the young people is what really is great. But why would we expect anything different? Of course, the truth is going to appeal to everybody. From 2-year-olds to 92-year-olds to 102-year-olds. Because the human is made by God to want truth. Well, I got to take that back. Not every human has that built-in antenna put by God in you to want to know the truth. There's a desire that's divinely implanted. And if you don't have it, you don't have it. God has not put that in every human being. No, he hasn't. We know that. Which makes us even more thankful that he has chosen us out of the billions and trillions of people who have lived. He has chosen us to give us the truth. It is just rare. In fact, not only do not many people have this chip to be hungry for the truth, like Bradley, like me, like you, like Georgina. But we are so rare. The hunger that we have, not only for the truth, but to want to see Christ, to be straining at our bonds, to be delivered from this realm of mortality. Well, I'm going to teach on a scriptural topic at the end of the show. Somebody asked a great question. I can't remember who it was. You'll know who you are. But the question was, how is it that those coming out of the lake of fire are already prepared for the consummation? This is such a good question. And I didn't cover it. And I'm going to cover it now in the waning moments of this show. And then tomorrow I'll read you some mail, some questions from a young man who's getting the truth via this show. And he's loving it. So we're going to share his questions. I'm going to share his questions with you tomorrow. And you'll have somebody else to fellowship with. Now you have Bradley Shadforth in Australia. And whoever is publishing my videos in Poland, go for it. Thank you. It's a lot of work. I mean, they're putting in the subtitles, right? That's a lot of work. But you're doing well. You're a soldier. You're a fellow evangelist, a fellow soldier in this information war, bringing the truth to a world that is antagonistic toward it. But we find out when we broadcast who has a softness for it. So how is it that those coming out of the lake of fire, and I think I've established that fairly clearly. Some people still don't understand it, but I can't be any more clear than I have been. The lake of fire is the second death. And we have people coming out and they're prepared for the consummation. This is why. And this is what I wish I had said last week. Everything that the people who believe the second death is a second life, a second mortality, where they're coming to an education about God, everything these people want to be happening in the lake of fire, in the second death, it's happening at the great white throne. Now, if I were to present to you two arenas, and I ask you which of these two arenas, just by the sound of the name of the place, the name of the arena, which of these two arenas would be the most likely place to come to a revelation and a realization of God? The great white throne or the second death? What a question. And you know there are people who would answer the second death. When given the option of the second death or the great white throne, of where the revelation of God dawns, where the light finally comes, obviously it will be the great white throne. When these people have been raised from the first death at the end of the millennium, in the juncture between eons 4 and 5, they are raised from the first death and they appear before God at the great white throne, very clearly explained to us by John in Revelation chapter 20. The great white throne. Break that word down. Break that phrase down. Break that location down. Break that event down. Great white throne. Speaking of the rule, majesty of God, how great it is, and that it's based on justice. And the result is beneficial because it's white throne. It's not a black throne. It could be called the great good throne. It's not the great evil throne. It's not the horrible black cauldron of death. The second death is that. And you telling me there are some people who would say, oh, the second death sounds more likely of a place to be where people come to a realization of the truth. The second death, the lake of fire, the second death. That sounds, if you have to choose between that and the great white throne, you're choosing the second death? No. And we don't know how long the great white throne judgment lasts, but these people are alive. They're alive now. They've been through the first death, death, been through it. They went through it unconsciously, no concept of the passage of time at all. And so they're standing before God. Heaven and earth have fled. Books are opened, and they're judged according to what is written in the books. And it is at this time that they come to a realization of the truth, a realization of justification. And they're not coming to it via faith. They're coming to it via sight. That is the special blessing that we have. We come to it by faith because we don't see God. We don't see Christ. We're living in this terrible, evil world. Thank God there's English toffee in this world, but that's one of the gracious gifts of God. So they're standing before God, and they're finally seeing the truth. So they're not believing by faith, they're believing by sight. Nevertheless, we'll take it. It's been graciously granted us to have not seen and yet believed. But to these people, they're going to believe it when they see it. And then the question comes, well, then why are they going to the second death? Martin, how could it possibly be? You're telling us that they're enlightened at this time. Even the worst sinners of earth, of human history, are enlightened at this time. They understand. And yet, if their names are not found in the book of life, they go to the second death. In other words, and the judgment here is based on their acts, not on their faith, because as I just said, they had no faith. The judgment is based on their acts. Well, ask yourself this question. Why is it that people who come to a realization of the truth now are brothers and sisters who have died in Christ? They go to the first death. A. Enoch, the translator of the Concordant version, smart guy. The Apostle Paul, let's start with him. The Apostle Paul. Who knew more about the evangel? Who was so full of grace, full of life, full of love, full of understanding, full of realization? Who was more of that than him? And yet, he got his freaking head chopped off, according to tradition. He went to the first death. So I don't hear anybody saying, no fair, no fair. Paul got all this wisdom and realizations, no fair that he should die the first death. Nobody says that, because it's the first death. It's just the way it is. There's a resurrection. Okay, so why would we level a complaint against those who come to a realization of truth at the great white throne, and then go to the second death? It's the same thing. If you're going to object to that and say it's not fair that you're telling me they come up to speed, they're already prepared, as the questioner says. How is it that they're already prepared for the consummation? They became prepared at the great white throne. Then why did they go to the second death? Because their names were not written in the book of life. Well, that's not fair. Well, is it fair that the Apostle Paul went to the first death? No? Okay, it's just how it is, right? Well, the second death is just how it is. And I think some people are still wanting me to explain why God would do that. But I don't need to explain it. Why? We know the mechanics of it. We know what it is. And it's just why the first death? I don't know. It sucks. To prepare us for glory, to prepare us for resurrection. So these people are going to be prepared for the consummation when God becomes all in all. And yes, there is resurrection out of the second death. It's called the consummation, when death is abolished. And so this is the way God does it. It's his operation. It is a grand operation. It is a glorious operation. It is beyond human comprehension. But God will be justified for all his works. It is great. It is white. And God is on the throne.